Lily hummed softly, a tune from Can't Help Falling in Love escaping her lips. As she browsed the dusty shelves, "Oh, Grace." She was a self-proclaimed Elvis fanatic, a title she wore with pride even if it sometimes made her feel a little out of step with her classmates. While they obsessed over TikTok trends and pop idols, Lily found solace and excitement in the King's timeless voice, his incredible stage presence, and the tragic beauty of his life story. Today she wasn't looking for anything specific, just a quiet escape from the humdrum of a slow Saturday afternoon. Her parents were at a barbecue, and her older brother was as usual glued to his video game console. The antique shop, with its scent of old wood and forgotten memories, felt like a comforting hug. She ran her fingers over a collection of vintage records and paused at a display of old books, their spines cracked and faded. Most were classics, some obscure histories. But one particular book caught her eye. It was a well-worn leather-bound Bible, smaller than most, with a simple, almost unassuming appearance. Cover was dark brown, polished smooth from years of handling, and the gold lettering of Holy Bible was barely visible, worn down to a faint shimmer. What drew her to it wasn't its age or its religious text, but a small, almost imperceptible detail. On the spine, near the very bottom, a tiny faint etching of a crown seemed to be barely visible if you caught it in just the right light. It was so subtle, she almost missed. And then, as she picked it up, a loose, yellowed bookmark slipped out from between its pages, landing softly on the wooden shelf. It wasn't a fancy bookmark, just a thin strip of paper, torn from something else, with a single handwritten word scrawled on it in fading ink. "Always, always," she whispered, a strange feeling tingling in her fingers. It felt personal, like a whisper from the past. For a split second, an image of Elvis in his iconic jumpsuits flashed through her mind, but she quickly dismissed it. This was just an old Bible. Still the worn leather, the hidden crown, the simple word it called to her. "Find anything interesting, dear?" a kindly voice asked. It was Mr. Henderson, the shop owner, a man whose face was a road-out of wrinkles and smiles. He always seemed to materialize out of thin air. Lily held up the Bible. "Justice. It feels special." Mr. Henderson peered at it over his spectacles. "Ah, yes, that one's been here a while. Came from an estate sale. Upstate old lady who owned it said it belonged to her father, who was quite the traveler. Must have picked it up somewhere." He shrugged. $5. It felt like a steal. Lily paid for it, tucking the old Bible carefully into her backpack, the word "always" still echoing in her mind. She left the shop with a lightness in her step, the usual Saturday afternoon ennui replaced by a quiet sense of anticipation. She didn't know why, but this old book felt like more than just an old book. Back in her room, amidst posters of Elvis and shelves filled with his CDs, Lily gently pulled out the Bible. She ran her thumb over the worn leather, feeling the history embedded in its pages. She opened it carefully, the dry paper rustling softly. Pages were thin, almost translucent, and the edges were gilded though the gold was tarnished with age. She flipped through it, past the Old Testament, past the New Testament, until she reached the Psalms. She paused, captivated by the rhythm of the verses. Then she noticed it. Not a single mark, but a series of them. Faint, penciled underlines beneath certain words or phrases. They weren't heavy or careless, but precise, almost deliberate. "He restoreth my soul." One line read, underline. A few pages later, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," also underline. And then in the margin, next to a verse about guidance and light, a tiny, almost invisible star had been drawn. It was the same kind of star that often adorned Elvis's stage costumes, or the star on the Graceland gates. Lily's heart began to beat a little faster. Coincidence? Maybe. combination of the faint crown on the spine, the word always, and now these deliberate markings. It was too much to ignore. She took a deep breath, pushing down the surge of excitement. This couldn't be what she was thinking, could it? Elvis was known to carry a Bible to mark verses that resonated with him. He was a deeply spiritual man, especially in his later years. She spent the next hour meticulously going through the Bible, page by page, her eyes scanning for anything out of place. It was like a treasure hunt, only she didn't know what the treasure was, or if it even existed. She found more underlines, more faint symbols. A small drawn guitar near a verse about making a joyful noise, a pair of musical notes next to a passage about new songs. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to spark her imagination. The more she looked, the more a wild, unbelievable thought took root in her mind. What if this wasn't just an old Bible? What if somehow it was his? What if Elvis Presley himself had held this very book marked, these very pages, found solace in these very words? The thought sent shivers down her spine, a mixture of awe and disbelief. She knew logically that the chances were astronomically slim. Millions of Bibles existed, but something deep inside her, something tied to her unwavering admiration for the King, urged her to keep looking, to keep exploring. There was a story here. She felt it, a secret whisper from the past. And Lily, for the first time in a long time, felt like she was on the verge of something truly extraordinary. She closed the Bible, holding it close. Always, she whispered again, feeling the weight of possibility in her hands. The next morning, Lily woke up with the sun, the old Bible still on her nightstand where she'd placed it. Her dreams had been a kaleidoscope of Elvis Graceland and swirling biblical texts. She reached for the book immediately, her fingers tracing the faded gold lettering on the cover. The initial thrill from yesterday hadn't faded. If anything, it had intensified. She knew she couldn't just jump to conclusions. The little crown, the musical notes, the word always, it all felt too specific, too personal to be mere coincidence. She decided to approach it systematically. First, she needed to see if there was any way to verify if it was truly Elvis's Bible. A long shot, she knew, but she had to try. Her first stop was the internet. She typed Elvis Presley Personal Bible into the search bar. Pages loaded, filled with articles about his spirituality, his favorite verses, and indeed his known habit of marking up his Bibles. She found images of a few of his Bibles, sometimes displayed in museums or in photographs. They were usually leather-bound, often with his name or initials embossed, or sometimes simply well worn from use. This Bible didn't have his name, but it had that tiny, almost hidden crown. She looked for specific details. The type of leather, the size, the font inside. It was hard to tell from online photos alone, but the general appearance matched. Many articles mentioned his love for the Psalms, which was where she'd found the majority of the marked verses. One article mentioned he often wrote notes in the margins, sometimes just single words, sometimes entire thoughts. Lily went back to her Bible, scanning the margins. Nothing as elaborate as full sentences. Just the occasional tiny drawing or symbol. Then she remembered something an Elvis historian had mentioned in a documentary she'd watched 100 times. Elvis had multiple Bibles, and he often gave them away to friends or family members, sometimes with personal inscriptions. This complicated things. If he gave it away, it wouldn't necessarily have his name inside. She decided to focus on the markings themselves. Were they random, or did they follow a pattern? She took out her notebook and a pen, feeling like a detective. She started on the first marked verse she'd found. Psalm chapter 23, verse 3. He restoreth my soul. She wrote it down, then noted the page number and any nearby symbols. The small star was next to it. She continued, chapter by chapter, carefully listing every underlined phrase, every circled word, every tiny drawing. It was painstaking work, but the more she did it, the more fascinated she became. The words he'd chosen to highlight seemed to tell a story of their own. They were about comfort, guidance, strength in adversity, and the power of faith. They resonated with the image Lily had of Elvis in his later years, a man grappling with immense fame, loneliness, and a search for inner peace. One specific page caught her attention. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 to 6 were heavily underlined. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Next to it, not a drawing, but a single barely legible letter P was scrawled. It was so faint, she almost missed it. Priscilla Parker. The possibilities swirled. She noticed a peculiar pattern emerging. Many of the underlined passages seemed to cluster around themes of hidden wisdom, secret knowledge, or uncovering truth. For example, a verse in Job about uncovering deep things out of darkness, or a passage in Deuteronomy about secret things belonging to the Lord. It was almost as if the highlighted verses were guiding her, encouraging her to look deeper. Lily felt a jolt of excitement. What if the markings themselves were the code? Not just random underlines, but a deliberate message embedded within the sacred text. She started looking for non-biblical marks, and she found one. Tucked away on the very last page, a blank end paper before the back cover, was a series of faint, almost invisible dots. They were spaced irregularly, almost like Braille, but not quite. They were too small, too faint. She tried holding the page up to the light, but it didn't reveal anything more. This was definitely beyond coincidence. The scattered marks, the specific themes, the faint symbols, the mysterious. Pew. And now these dots, it felt like a deliberate puzzle, a secret waiting to be unlocked. But how? She was good with history and music, but codes and ciphers were a different skill set entirely. Lily sat back looking at her notebook filled with scribbled notes and biblical references. She felt a surge of doubt. Was she just imagining things, projecting her Elvis obsession onto an old book? Her logical brain told her to dismiss it, to just enjoy the old Bible for what it was. But her heart, the part of her that connected so deeply with Elvis's music and his soul, told her to persist. "Okay, Elvis," she whispered to the choir room, holding the Bible open. "If this is really from you, what are you trying to tell me?" She closed her eyes, trying to clear her mind, to think like Elvis might have thought. He loved spiritual things, mystery, perhaps even a bit of intrigue. He was known for his generous heart. Could this be a message about that? A message he wanted to be found, but only by someone who cared enough to look closely. The idea was both thrilling and overwhelming. She felt a responsibility, a strange connection to the king himself. This wasn't just a hobby anymore. This was a mission. She knew she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. Someone with more experience, more knowledge. Someone who might actually believe her crazy story. But where would she find such a person? The internet was vast, but personal connections were hard to make. She chewed on her lip, a plan beginning to form in her mind, a hesitant but determined one. The more Lily studied the Bible, the more convinced she became. The faint marks weren't random. They were too precise, too deliberate. She spent hours cross-referencing, looking for patterns, trying to decipher what they might mean. She'd laid out photocopies of the marked pages on her desk, feeling like a conspiracy theorist, but unable to shake the feeling that she was onto something big. The P in the margin was still a mystery, but she'd found another similar single letter, an L, next to a verse about love enduring all things. Could they be initials? If so, whose? She tried looking for acronyms within the marked verses, or numerical sequences based on chapter and verse numbers. Nothing coherent emerged. It was frustrating, like being on the edge of a great secret, but lacking the key to unlock it. Then, one evening, while rereading a biography of Elvis, she stumbled upon a small detail she'd previously overlooked. It mentioned his deep interest in numerology and gematria, the ancient practice of assigning numerical values to letters. He was fascinated by hidden meanings within texts, particularly spiritual ones. Lily's eyes widened. Could this be it? Could the numbers be the key? She immediately went back to the Bible. There were no obvious numbers written in the margins, only the faint drawings and underlines. But what if the numbers weren't written but implied? She remembered the peculiar spacing of the dots on the very last page. What if they represented a number sequence? She carefully measured the distance between the dots, both horizontally and vertically, trying to find a pattern. It was difficult because they were so faint. She tried using different lighting, even a magnifying glass. After an hour of squinting, she realized something. The dots weren't randomly placed. They formed a very subtle, almost imperceptible shape. A capital E. Faint, broken, but undeniably an E. And then, a few inches below it, another faint series of dots, forming an L, and then a V. Oh my gosh, she breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. Elvis. She continued to work on it, connecting the faint dots piece by painstaking piece. It took her another hour, but there it was, faint but undeniable, spelled out in tiny, almost invisible pinpricks on the very last page, ELVISP. And below that, a series of 5 distinct smaller dots, arranged in a circle. It was his name. This wasn't just a fan's hopeful delusion anymore. This was tangible proof. This was real. And it meant there was a secret hidden within these pages, a secret Elvis himself had woven into the fabric of his personal scripture. The revelation was overwhelming. She felt a profound connection to the king, as if he were reaching out across the decades, trusting her with something precious. But what was it, and how could she unlock the rest of the code? The gematria idea still nagged at her. If Elvis was interested in assigning numbers to letters, then maybe the underlined words had a numerical significance. She started by assigning numbers to the letters of the alphabet. A equals 1, B equals 2, etc. It was a long shot, but she had to try. She chose a verse he'd heavily underlined. Psalm chapter 118, verse 24. This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. It was a well-known, optimistic verse. She wrote down each word, then converted each letter to its numerical value, then summed the values for each word. The numbers were large and seemed random. It didn't immediately form a coherent message. Okay. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Elvis often used certain phrases or numbers that had personal significance to him. His birth date, the date he first performed, the address of Graceland, or the date of his mother's passing. What if the numbers weren't based on gematria, but on something else entirely? She went back to the P and L she'd found in the margins. If P stood for Presley and L for love, what did that tell her? Maybe it wasn't about the meaning of the letters, but their position. She returned to the first marked page. Psalm 23. He restoreth my soul. The P was in Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5. The L was in 1 Corinthians 13. She wrote down the chapter and verse numbers, 23, 3, 3, 5, 13, 4. They seemed arbitrary. Frustrated Lily leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. She'd hit a wall. She had verified that this was likely Elvis's Bible, and that there was a code, but she was no expert. This was beyond her current abilities. She needed an external perspective, someone who understood codes, or at least someone who understood Elvis on a profound level beyond what books and documentaries could offer, someone who might have a piece of the puzzle she was missing. She thought about the online Elvis fan forums she sometimes lurked on. There were some incredibly knowledgeable people there, some who had followed his career for decades, who remembered him from their youth. Maybe one of them could help. It felt risky, exposing this incredible discovery to strangers. What if they thought she was crazy? What if someone tried to steal the Bible? But she also knew she couldn't let Elvis's secret just stay hidden, lost in a dusty book. It felt too important. She decided to make a cautious post. No photos of the Bible, no identifying details about the shop. Just a hypothetical question. If you found an old Bible with subtle markings that seemed like a code, how would you begin to decipher it? Especially if you suspected it belonged to someone famous. She held her breath, hitting post. The internet was a vast, unpredictable place. She had no idea if anyone would respond, or if they would dismiss her inquiry as a childish fantasy. But she had a glimmer of hope. A single fragile thread connecting her to a potential ally in this incredible heart-stopping mystery. Lily anxiously checked the Elvis fan forum every few minutes after posting her vague query. The internet, usually a source of endless information and entertainment, now felt like a vast, silent void. She half expected mockery, or at best, indifference. She went to bed, feeling a mix of hope and regret, wondering if she'd made a mistake. The next morning, she practically pounced on her laptop, and there it was, one new reply. Her heart pounded as she clicked on the notification. The username was Bluestwade Heart, Mrs. Peterson. Lily reread the message several times. Mrs. Peterson, it sounded kind, sensible, and knowledgeable, not dismissive at all. The phrase, reflective of their mind, particularly resonated with her. This wasn't about cracking a military code. It was about understanding a person, Elvis. She decided to reply, still cautious, but a little more open. My main problem is, I'm not sure what kind of pattern to look for. It feels like a puzzle, but I don't have all the pieces. She waited again, her pulse quickening with each passing minute. This felt like a huge step, sharing even this much. A few minutes later, another reply popped up from Blue Sweetheart. Subtle markings, deep spiritual side. I've studied Elvis for over 50 years. His faith was central to his life. That's why. I'm just a fan, not an expert. A pause, then a new message. This one contained a phone number. This is fascinating, Lily. I'm Mrs. Clara Peterson. I live in Memphis, not far from Graceland. I've dedicated my life to understanding Elvis, not just the legend, but the man. I think we need to talk. Call me when you can. I promise to keep your secret safe. This sounds like something very, very important. Lily stared at the phone number, her hand trembling slightly. Memphis, not far from Graceland. This wasn't just some casual fan. This was someone serious, someone who lived and breathed Elvis. The idea of talking to a real live expert, someone who might actually believe her, filled her with a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. She took a deep breath and dialed the number. It rang once, twice, and then a warm, steady voice answered. Hello, Clara Peterson, here. Mrs. Peterson. Hi, it's Lily from the forum. Ah, Lily, I was hoping you'd call. Tell me everything, and I mean everything. Don't leave out a single detail. This could be something truly profound. Lily, still a bit hesitant, began to recount her story from the beginning. Finding the Bible, the feeling it gave her, the faint crown, the word, always, and then the meticulous discovery of the underlines, the symbols, the P and L, and finally the incredible revelation of ELVI's EISP. She described the themes of the underlined verses, the recurring idea of hidden wisdom. Mrs. Peterson listened, patiently interjecting with only fascinating or go on every now and then. When Lily finished, there was a moment of silence. Lily, Mrs. Peterson's voice was soft, but laced with a profound sense of awe. What you have described aligns with so much of what I know about Elvis, especially his later years, his fascination with the esoteric, his search for deeper meaning, his desire to leave a legacy of, we can work on this together in person. I have a feeling this code isn't meant to be broken by a single person, but by two hearts connected by a love for Elvis. Lily's mind reeled. Memphis, Graceland. This was a dream come true, wrapped in the mystery of Elvis's secret. Her parents would never agree to let her travel alone. I'm not sure if I can get to Memphis right away, Mrs. Peterson. I'm still in high school, and my parents. Of course, dear, I understand completely, Mrs. Peterson said, her voice warm. It's a long shot, but if anyone would devise something so intricate and personal, it would be Elvis. Lily felt a surge of hope. A video call was manageable. This was real. She had an ally. An actual Elvis. The mystery was deepening, and she was no longer alone on this incredible journey. Yes, Lily said, her voice filled with newfound determination. Yes, I'd like that very much. The video call with Mrs. Peterson felt like stepping into another dimension. Clara Peterson appeared on Lily's screen, her kind face framed by soft white hair, her eyes twinkling with intelligence and a lifetime of devotion to Elvis. Her living room, visible in the background, was a cozy sanctuary filled with books, framed photos, and what looked like Elvis memorabilia. Not the tacky kind, but tasteful, cherished item. Welcome, Lily, Mrs. Peterson said, her voice warm and welcoming. But see this remarkable book. Lily carefully positioned her laptop so Mrs. Peterson could see the Bible. She opened it to the first marked page. Psalm 23. So as I told you, these faint underlines, He restoreth my soul. And this tiny star here. Mrs. Peterson leaned closer to her screen, her brow furrowed in concentration. Yes, I see, and the star very subtle. Almost like a personal symbol. Does it appear elsewhere? A few times, Lily confirmed, flipping to another page, next to a verse about following His light in John. They spent the next 2 hours meticulously going through the Bible, page by page, Lily showing each marked verse, each faint symbol, each almost invisible dot. Mrs. Peterson listened intently, occasionally making notes in a small, leather-bound journal that looked as old as the Bible itself. The consistency is remarkable, Mrs. Peterson murmured at one point. The hand-drawn symbols are always drawn with the same slight tremor. The underlines are always thin pencil lines. This isn't random, this is intentional. They discussed the numerical pattern that spelled out ELVISP on the last page. The 5 dots arranged in a circle, Lily, Mrs. Peterson mused. You thought it might be for Aaron. That's a good guess. But what if it's not a letter at all? What if it's a number? The number 5 was very significant to Elvis. His lucky number deal, even the number of letters in Elvis. Lily felt a jolt. So the P and the 5. Precisely Presley 5, it points to him unequivocally. Now, let's go back to those faint letters you mentioned. The P in Proverbs and the L in 1 Corinthians. Lily, corrector 3, verse 5. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. And then 1 Corinthians, verse 5. Eyes gleam as... Lily, what do these 2 verses, combined with those single letters, suggest to you? Lily thought hard. Trust and love, or P for Presley. L, but what if P and Tran part of a sequence? What if they're directional? Presley loved riddles, hidden messages. He believed God communicated in subtle ways. She then pulled out a large leather-bound book from her shelf. This is a biblical concordance. It lists every word in the Bible. And where it appears, let's try something, Lily. Read out the full verse of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 again, including the verse number. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. And the full verse of 1 Corinthians 13, 4. 1 Corinthians 13, 4. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself. is not puffed up. Excellent, Mrs. Peterson said, flipping through her concordance. Now, Lily, look at the first underlined word in Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5, trust, and the first word in 1 Corinthians 13, 4, charity. What do those words mean to you in Elvis's context? Trust and charity. Lily mused. Elvis was a trusting person sometimes to his detriment, and he was incredibly charitable, always giving money away, buying cars for strangers. Exactly, Mrs. Peterson nodded. Now let's see where trust appears in the Bible other than Proverbs, and where charity appears. We are looking for a link. They spent the next hour slowly, meticulously cross-referencing words. It was like sifting through sand to find grains of gold. They focused on words that were underlined or near a symbol. Peace, light, truth, hope, love, give. Suddenly, Lily noticed something. Mrs. Peterson, look, in the book of Matthew chapter 6 verse 3 it says, "But when thou doest alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth." And it's underlined here, and near it there's a tiny, faint $sign drawing. Mrs. Peterson's eyes widened. A $sign, and a verse about secret giving him. This is huge. This is about his legacy of giving his secret benevolence. He was always doing things quietly, without fanfare. So the code is about his hidden charity. Lily asked, a wave of understanding washing over her. Not money to find, but good deeds. I believe so, Mrs. Peterson said, her voice filled with emotion. This is his true self revealed through the varied book that gave him so much comfort. The P and Lee, perhaps they are just Presley's love, and the numerical dots forming his name, a signature, a way of saying, this is for me, and this is what I truly cared about, they continued. Driven by this new revelation, the scattered clues began to coalesce, forming a more coherent picture. The underlined verses were not random at all. They spoke of humble giving, of helping the afflicted, of building a better future through quiet acts of kindness. The faint musical notes and stars were not about his career, but about the spirit of his work, the rhythm of his generosity. We need to find out what this charity was or is, Lily said, her voice filled with determination. If he set up something secret, it needs to be known. His heart needs to be seen. Mrs. Peterson nodded, her eyes glistening. Indeed, this is no ordinary fan discovery, Lily. This is a divine appointment. The king left a message, and it seems you, dear Lily, were meant to find it. The journey was just beginning, and it felt like the most important quest Lily had ever embarked upon. The discovery that the Bible's code pointed to Elvis's charitable heart rather than some hidden treasure filled Lily with a profound sense of purpose. It wasn't about gold or jewels. It was about revealing a beautiful truth about the king, a side of him often overshadowed by his fame and struggles. Mrs. Peterson was equally moved, her voice often thick with emotion, as they continued their online sessions. But he was also private about his grander gestures of charity. They had developed a system. Lily would carefully transcribe each marked verse and symbol from the Bible, and Mrs. Peterson would cross-reference them with Elvis's known quotes, interviews, and biographical details. They were looking for connections, for phrases, or concepts that appeared in both the Bible and Elvis's life. One recurring theme, they noticed, was the forgotten verses about remembering the poor, the lonely, the sick, and then a small, barely visible sketch of what looked like a musical note with a teardrop next to it on a page about helping those who sing with heavy hearts. Could it be about musicians? Lily wondered aloud. He knew what it was like, the struggle, the early days. Mrs. Peterson hummed thoughtfully. It's certainly possible. Many musicians, especially in his era, struggled with financial stability, mental health addiction, problems Elvis himself was intimately familiar with, or saw in his peers. Their breakthrough came when Lily found a specific set of underlined verses in the book of Acts chapter 20 verse 35, which reads, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." This verse was not only heavily underlined, but next to it in the margin was a very faint, almost imperceptible symbol. Lily hadn't recognized intertwined G and E. G, golly, the Tom Graceland Estate, Mrs. Peterson suddenly whispered, her voice filled with excitement. Elvis often used abbreviations for his most cherished places or people. Graceland was his sanctuary, his home, the place he felt most himself, but also a symbol of his journey and his struggles. Lily stared at the symbol on her screen, then back at her notes. So this points to Graceland. But what? In Graceland, it's a museum now. Millions of people visit. Exactly, Mrs. Peterson said. It wouldn't be something obvious, but if he wanted to ensure a secret was found, he might hide it in plain sight or in a place that held deep personal meaning for him, a place not accessible to the general public, or only accessible with special knowledge. They scoured old Graceland blueprints and diagrams Mrs. Peterson possessed, looking for any unusual features, any forgotten rooms or areas. They found nothing out of the ordinary that matched the clues. Then Lily remembered something. Mrs. Peterson, do you know if Elvis had any specific private spaces at Graceland that weren't part of the main tour? Like a personal study or a meditation garden? Ah, yes, Mrs. Peterson said, a spark in her eyes. There was the meditation garden, of course, where he and his family are buried. Very personal, but also a small, rarely photographed room in the main house, off the living room, that he sometimes referred to as his sanctuary. It was where he kept his spiritual books, his personal journals, and often meditated. It was exceptionally referred to as his sanctuary. The sanctuary. Lily repeated, a shiver running down her spine. What if that's what the GE combined with "It is more blessed to give than to receive" points to Graceland Estate, a place of spiritual giving? It makes sense, Mrs. Peterson agreed. Place of private devotion connected to his deepest beliefs about charity. But how would a code lead us there? Specifically, they went back to the Bible, focusing on the verses that were clustered around the GE symbol. They found a series of numbers underlined within the verses themselves. Not the verse numbers, but actual numbers within the text. For example, a verse might say 40 days and 40 nights, and the 40 would be underlined. These numbers aren't making sense in sequence, Lily said, frustrated. They're too random. What if they're not a sequence, but an address? Mrs. Peterson suggested. Or coordinates, or a combination that unlocks something. Lily looked closer. The numbers were 4182, and then a few pages later, 4182, 13. Lily read aloud. What could that be? Let me check something, Mrs. Peterson said, pulling out another old book. Elvis used to keep a very detailed inventory of his personal belongings, often noting where certain cherished items were stored. Even within Graceland itself, he was meticulous. She flipped through the yellowed pages of a digitized personal inventory list. Ah, here it is, she finally exclaimed. Item number 4182. A small, locked, wooden box. Description. Personal effects for quiet reflection. It's listed as being in the sanctuary room at Graceland, specifically on a shelf behind a painting. Lily gasped. A locked box, and it's for quiet reflection, Mrs. Peterson. This has to be it. The code is pointing us to a physical object. A box in his private sanctuary room at Graceland, where he kept his spiritual things. And the 13. The 13 could be a combination for the lock or a date or the 13th item on a specific shelf. Given the nature of the code, I suspect it's a combination, Mrs. Peterson's speculation. But how do we get access to a private, off-tour room at Graceland to confirm this? This was the biggest hurdle yet. Graceland was a highly protected, historical landmark. They couldn't just walk in and demand access to a private room. "We need a plan," Lily said, her mind already racing. "We need to talk to someone who has authority at Graceland, someone who understands Elvis's spiritual side, not just the entertainment legend, someone who would believe our story." The path was no longer abstract. It led directly to Graceland, to a secret room, and to a hidden box that promised to reveal Elvis's deepest, most incredible legacy. The journey to unlock the king's true heart was about to take a very real, very exciting turn. Accessing Graceland's private sanctuary room proved to be a daunting task. Lily and Mrs. Peterson spent days brainstorming, researching, and making calls. They learned that the room was indeed off limits to the public, primarily due to its delicate historical nature and personal significance to the Presley family. "We can't just barge in, dear," Mrs. Peterson explained gently. "We need to approach this with the utmost respect and integrity. We're not treasure hunters. We're guardians of a potential truth." Their best bet, they decided, was to contact the Graceland Archives and Collections Department. Mrs. Peterson, with her extensive knowledge and respected reputation within the Elvis fan community, took the lead. She sent a carefully worded email explaining that she and a young protege, Lily, had stumbled upon some unique, previously unknown personal markings in a Bible that they strongly believed belonged to Elvis Presley. She hinted at a coded message, suggesting it related to his spiritual life and a potential unrevealed aspect of his charitable endeavors. She emphasized the profound historical and personal significance this could hold. To their surprise, they received a reply within a day. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the head archivist at Graceland, was cautiously intrigued. She agreed to a video conference. The call was tense. Lily had the Bible ready, and Mrs. Peterson laid out their findings with precision. The unique symbols, the specific themes of the underlined verses, and the numerical clues. Pour it to the sanctuary room and the locked box, item 4182. She was a stern but fair woman, with a deep respect for historical accuracy. When Mrs. Peterson finished, there was a long silence. "It was found years ago behind a built-in bookshelf in that room, just as you described. But no one ever knew what was inside, or what its significance was. It was simply catalogued as personal effects for quiet reflection, based on his own notes." Lily and Mrs. Peterson exchanged a look of triumphant disbelief. They were right. However, Dr. Reed continued, "Accessing and opening such an item as personal property requires careful consideration and security protocols. We cannot simply open it based on a theory, however plausible." "We understand that, Dr. Reed," Mrs. Peterson replied calmly. "Code, as we understand it, provides the means to open it. The number 13, we believe it's the combination." Dr. Reed paused, then nodded slowly. "In a supervised, secure environment, you may attempt to open it with the number 13. If it opens, we will proceed from there. If not, then this remains a fascinating but unproven theory." Lily could barely contain her excitement. This was really happening. She was going to Graceland not as a tourist, but as someone on a mission to uncover a piece of Elvis's secret history. A week later, Lily, clutching her Bible, and Mrs. Peterson, looking dignified and determined, arrived at Graceland. They were ushered into a secure, sterile room in the archives building. Dr. Reed and 2 security personnel were present. On a padded table sat the small, dark wooden box, unassuming yet radiating a palpable sense of mystery. It was about the size of a shoebox, simply crafted with a tarnished brass numerical lock. Lily's heart pounded as she approached the box. This was it. Years of Elvis history, a hidden code. And now the moment of truth. Mrs. Peterson placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Go on, Lily," she whispered. "You found the clue." Lily took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched the brass dial of the lock. It was a simple 4-digit combination lock. She remembered the numbers they found in the Bible. 4, 1, 8, 2, and the number 13. How did they combine? Could it be 4182? Then 13 as a prefix or suffix to another code? Lily mused. Or a date? Dr. Reed interjected. If the note said numerical lock, it would be a simple numerical combination. No prefixes or suffixes unless noted. Maybe the two sets of numbers combine? Lily looked at the Bible. The 4,182 were explicit numbers. The 13 was a separate set of clues. What if 13 wasn't part of the combo but a key to how to use the 4,182? Then it clicked. Elvis loved gematria. The numerical value of letters and the 13 was separate. Could it be a date reference? January 3rd? No, wait, Lily said, her eyes fixed on the lock. What if the 13 isn't a combination but an instruction? What if it's telling us which numbers from 4,182 to use? Mrs. Peterson looked at her. Explain, dear. What if the code is simple? Use the first, third, fourth, and second digits of 4,182 based on the 13, Lily suggested, her mind racing. So 4,182, the first digit is 4, the fourth digit is 2, the second digit is 1. She looked at the lock, a simple 4-digit combination. She slowly, deliberately turned the dial. 4 to 8, 2 to 1. A soft, almost imperceptible click echoed in the silent room. Lily guessed. The lock was open. Dr. Reed leaned forward, her expression a mix of astonishment and profound respect. Unbelievable, she whispered. Lily slowly, reverently lifted the lid of the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay 2 items. The first was a small, leather-bound journal. Its pages thick and yellowed, clearly filled with handwritten script. The second was a stack of legal documents tied with a thin, faded red ribbon. The air in the room seemed to hum with anticipation. King's true gift, his secret legacy, was about to be revealed. With trembling hands, Lily carefully lifted the leather journal from the box. It felt surprisingly heavy, not just with age, but with the weight of untold stories. She opened it to the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably Elvis's. A familiar, distinctive scrawl she'd seen in countless autographs and letters. The first entry was dated from his late 60s, a time when his personal struggles were at their peak, yet his spiritual seeking was also intense. The words were raw, honest, and deeply moving. I want to leave something that matters, something that comes from my real heart, not just the king persona. Lily's eyes welled up. This wasn't the flamboyant showman. This was the vulnerable, searching man. She turned the pages, reading excerpts aloud, her voice sometimes breaking with emotion. The journal chronicled Elvis's spiritual journey, his doubts, his moments of profound faith, his anxieties about his health, and his deep regret over mistakes he'd made. But interspersed with these personal reflections were paragraphs dedicated to a recurring dream, a dream of helping others, especially those who, like him, pursued their passion for music only to be crushed by the pressures of the industry or personal demons. Place where their music can heal, where they can heal without judgment, not for fame, not for glory, but for grace. Then she reached a key entry dated March 12, 1976. The Lord told me, "It is more blessed to give than to receive. This is my way of getting back. Long after I'm gone, I hope someday someone finds this, understands my heart, and helps this tiny seed grow." Lily looked up, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Reed and Mrs. Peterson were equally moved, their eyes glistening. "The Music of Hope Fund," Mrs. Peterson whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "His secret charity, all this time." Lily then picked up the stack of legal documents. They were official, if somewhat aged. Trust documents. They confirmed the establishment of the Music of Hope Fund in 1976 with initial seed money. It named a small, obscure bank as the trustee and outlined the fund's purpose: to provide financial and emotional support for struggling musicians, particularly those dealing with mental health issues, addiction, or overwhelming industry pressures. However, a more recent attached memo, dated much later, stated that the fund had become largely dormant due to a lack of awareness, additional funding, and the initial trustee bank having been acquired multiple times, losing track of the small, quiet trust. It was still legally active, but effectively forgotten. A tiny flicker of Elvis's dream. "It's still here," Lily said, her voice filled with wonder. "His dream. It's still alive. Just barely." Dr. Reed composed herself, her professional demeanor returning, but with a new light in her eyes. "This is Mitterson. This journal, these documents, they reveal a side of Elvis Presley that the public rarely saw: his profound compassion, his personal struggles, and his desire to make a lasting, meaningful impact beyond his music. This fund, even if dormant, is a testament to his true character." "We have to do something," Lily said, her voice firm. "We have to bring it back to life. This is what the code was for. This is what he wanted. He wanted it to be found by someone who understood." Mrs. Peterson nodded, her eyes blazing with renewed purpose. "Indeed, this is his final, most profound performance, and we are the audience, and now the stewards." Dr. Reed looked at them, a rare smile gracing her lips. "This changes everything we thought we knew about his personal legacy. Graceland will assist you. We have the resources, the legal team, and the his Spungate." Code in the Bible hadn't led to hidden treasure in the traditional sense, but to something far more valuable: the hidden heart of a legend, a testament to his enduring love and compassion. The incredible discovery was not about Elvis's fame, but his profound, quiet humanity. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity, yet filled with a profound sense of purpose. Lily, Mrs. Peterson, and Dr. Reed formed an unlikely but incredibly effective team. Graceland's legal department quickly confirmed the validity of the Music of Hope Fund documents. It was small, largely inactive, but legally sound. The initial seed money, though modest by today's standards, had been preserved and had grown slightly over the decades, a testament to Elvis's foresight. Their first priority was to revitalize the fund, to bring it out of dormancy and into the light. This required careful planning. They couldn't just announce the discovery of a secret fund. They needed to honor Elvis's original intent: a quiet legacy of help, not a sensational headline. Elvis wanted this to be about the musicians, not about him. Mrs. Peterson reminded them constantly. It was his way of giving back without seeking further adulation. Dr. Reed suggested a soft launch, collaborating with existing music charities and mental health organizations that aligned with the fund's original mission. "We can introduce the Music of Hope Fund as a legacy initiative without initially focusing on the secret aspect. The journal entries can be revealed later, once the fund is established. And doing good work." Lily, with her tech savviness, volunteered to help design a simple, heartfelt website for the fund. She spent hours poring over Elvis's journal, selecting quotes that conveyed his empathy and vision for the fund. She didn't use any photos of the journal itself, only transcribed words, preserving its sacredness. The story of the Bible and the code would remain a private, cherished secret among the three of them, for now only to be shared carefully when the time was right and the fund was thriving. It was Elvis's personal touch meant for those who genuinely sought to understand his heart. Lily found herself in meetings with lawyers, charity experts, and even a few sympathetic musicians who were touched by the fund's mission. She learned about nonprofit management, fundraising, and the desperate need for mental health support in the music industry. She felt a growing sense of competence and confidence she never knew she possessed. She was no longer just a fan, she was an active participant in perpetuating the King's compassion. One afternoon, Mrs. Peterson invited Lily to her home. "I wanted to show you something, Lily," she said, leading her to a quiet study filled with Elvis's books and records. "I've been going through some of my own old notes. Elvis was a man who planned, and he had a quirky sense of humor. He often joked about leaving secret messages. This Bible, it feels like his final, most personal joke, one meant to be found by someone who truly listened." Inside were pictures of Elvis from his later years, looking thoughtful, sometimes weary, but always with a spark in his eyes. "See this one?" She pointed to a photo of Elvis holding a Bible on his knee, his finger resting on a page. The Bible in the photo looked remarkably similar to Lily's. "I always wondered what he was reading. Now I know." It was almost as if Elvis himself was in the room with them, smiling. As the fund's reestablishment progressed, Lily and Mrs. Peterson worked tirelessly. They found a small group of retired musicians who had themselves overcome struggles and who were eager to volunteer their time as mentored and counselors for the fund. These were people who understood the unique challenges of the music world and who could offer support and guidance that went beyond financial aid. The website was launched quietly with a simple press release outlining the fund's mission. It didn't mention Elvis by name, only referenced a legendary musician's vision for a compassionate legacy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Musicians from all over the country reached out, sharing their stories, seeking help, or offering to contribute. Many expressed relief that such a fund existed, a place where their struggles were understood. Lily saw the impact firsthand. She answered emails, helped organize initial outreach programs, and even participated in some of the early virtual support groups. Hearing the stories of struggling artists, seeing the relief on their faces when they realized they weren't alone, filled her with a satisfaction she'd never known. This wasn't just about Elvis. It was about genuine human connection and healing. One young guitarist, battling severe performance anxiety, wrote to the fund, "I was about to give up on my dream. This fund and the mentor showed me I wasn't a failure, just a human trying to navigate a tough world. Thank you for giving me hope." That message, more than anything else, confirmed to Lily that they were doing exactly what Elvis had envisioned. His quiet act of compassion, embedded in a coded Bible, was now a living, breathing force for good. The legacy was not just about the music. It was about the heart behind it. Months turned into a year. The Music of Hope Fund blossomed from a dormant trust into a vibrant, active charity. What started as a whisper in a forgotten Bible had become a beacon of hope for countless struggling musicians. The initial discretion around Elvis's direct involvement slowly lifted, and the story of the Bible and the journal was revealed first to the fund's beneficiaries and then in a carefully managed press conference to the world. The revelation sent shockwaves through the media, but not in the sensational way Lily had initially feared. Instead, the story was met with universal warmth and admiration. The public, always hungry for a deeper understanding of their idols, embraced this new facet of Elvis Presley. He wasn't just the king of rock and roll. He was also a quiet philanthropist, a compassionate soul who understood struggle and wanted to help. The narrative shifted from his tragic end to his enduring positive impact. Graceland dedicated a small special exhibit to the King's compassionate heart, putting the original Bible, under careful security of course, a digital copy of the journal, and a display explaining the history and mission of the Music of Hope Fund. They emphasized how the fund was a testament to Elvis's faith and his lifelong desire to help others in need. Lily, once a quiet, unassuming fan, found herself transformed. She became a spokesperson for the fund, often appearing alongside Mrs. Peterson, sharing their incredible journey. Her confidence soared, and she discovered a passion for nonprofit work, particularly in mental health advocacy for artists. She decided to pursue a college degree in social work and arts management, dedicating her future to expanding Elvis's compassionate legacy. "You know, Lily," Mrs. Peterson said one afternoon, as they sat in Graceland's meditation garden, a place that now held an even deeper meaning for them both. "Elvis never sought recognition for his private giving. He just wanted to help. This fund, being active and thriving, is exactly what he wanted. He wanted to be remembered not just for his voice, but for his heart. Lily smiled, looking at the peaceful surroundings. And he is Mrs. Peterson. More than ever, the Bible, it wasn't just a code. It was a map to his soul. It showed us who he truly was, beneath all the fame and the legend. The fund had helped dozens of musicians find their footing, reclaim their passion, and get the support they needed. Some went on to achieve success, always remembering the quiet help they received. Others found peace in simply being able to continue making music, free from the crushing burdens they once carried. One day, Lily received a heartfelt letter from a young blues singer who had overcome a severe addiction with the fund's support. "Your fund saved my life," he wrote. "It wasn't just the money, it was knowing someone. Some legend cared enough to set this up. It gave me faith in humanity and in my own music again. Thank you for honoring his dream." Lily kept that letter along with a photocopy of the last page of Elvis's Bible, the one with the faint pinprick dots forming his name, the dots that had led her on this incredible journey. Her own life had become infinitely richer. She had found a purpose, a community, and a deep, enduring connection to Elvis, not as a distant idol, but as a guiding spirit. Mrs. Peterson had found renewed vitality, her life's devotion to Elvis culminating in this profound contribution. The secret code in Elvis Presley's personal Bible didn't lead to a physical treasure of gold or jewels. It led to something far more valuable, the discovery of his true giving heart. It led to the revitalization of a legacy of compassion that would continue to heal and inspire for generations to come. It was a heartwarming reminder that the most incredible treasures are often found not in what we gain, but in the good we can do for others, quietly, sincerely, and with always in our hearts. Elvis's greatest performance, it turned out, was the silent symphony of his generosity.